William is reportedly formulating a plan to finally strip Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of their HRH titles. Riley Sullivan is a lifestyle reporter here at skynews.com.au, and he's always across the...
In a seismic upheaval that has reverberated across the globe, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been stripped of their financial foundation, their dreams of independence shattered by a single, devastating clause in Queen Elizabeth II's secret will. Hours ago, in a private, emotionally charged reading at Balmoral Castle, the Archewell Trust, their lifeline since stepping away from royal duties, was seized by the Crown, its funds frozen, its future now under royal control.
Markle is still using her HRH title despite agreeing to drop the title when the Sussexes left royal duties. How is Will planning to deal with this?
Princess Anne, the Queen's unyielding daughter, delivered this bombshell with a composure that masked its earth-shattering impact. What was the Queen's hidden directive? Why was it concealed until this moment? And who were the silent forces behind its execution?
Markle has been very brazen recently with the use of the HRH. Now, royal fans will know in 2020, during the negotiations for Harry and Meghan to leave royal duties, it was agreed with Queen Elizabeth that they will not use the HRH title. That is a long-standing precedent, and there's good reason for it. Basically, the HRH is only given to working.
This is a story of legacy, loyalty, and a monarchy reclaiming its authority. Join us as we uncover the truth behind Queen Elizabeth II's final act, a move that could redefine the Sussexes' place in royal history forever. ## a morning of shattered peace. It was a serene morning in Montecito, California, where Harry and Meghan had crafted a life of curated freedom. Their sleek, modern estate, nestled against the Pacific coast, was a sanctuary far from the rigid traditions of Buckingham Palace. Sunlight streamed through expansive windows, casting a golden glow over their carefully staged world of global influence and polished branding. The gentle rustle of coastal breezes provided a backdrop to their empire built on the promise of independence. But that tranquility was shattered by a single message that arrived like a thunderbolt. Princess Anne had summoned the royal family for a private reading of Queen Elizabeth II's sealed will. Harry read the notification 3 times, his hands trembling as he gripped his phone. Meghan's eyes darkened, her lips pressed into a tight line, her expression shifting from shock to grim understanding. No words were exchanged. They didn't need to be. For months, perhaps years, they had sensed this moment might come, but its arrival carried the sharp finality of a royal decree. Thousands of miles away at Balmoral Castle, the air was thick with history. Behind ancient stone walls, the royal family gathered in a room untouched by cameras or press. The tapestries lining the walls, woven with centuries of tradition, bore silent witness to a moment of confrontation, not celebration. Princess Anne stood at the center, a leather-bound folder embossed with the royal crest in her gloved hands. King Charles was present, his face a mask of stoicism, flanked by a somber Queen Camilla.
Since the release of Harry and Meghan's bombshell Netflix documentary, and the papers have been reacting overnight, oh boy, have they been reacting. The pair are dominating the front pages. One Conservative MP said that he is planning to bring forward legislation in an attempt to strip the Duke and Duchess of Sussex of their
The House of Lords isn't acting alone. They're reacting to a massive wave of public anger. A YouGov poll from May 2025 shows that 77% of the British public thinks Meghan should lose the Duchess of Sussex title. That's not just a majority, it's a landslide. It's the strongest public backlash against her ever recorded.
Changed my mind on things, but I didn't want them to be stripped of it, but I think I now understand they're trying to do, I think that would really be validated if they said, this institution isn't for us, we love our family, but we would like to hand these back. And I think that would be
It depends on the next part of the documentary and what it shows, doesn't it? You know,
because we haven't had the shock
factor yet. I feel really sad about it, to be honest.
I
feel sad that we've got to this point. I think they could have made a lot of differences.
I'll try and cool the temperature. We need to try and kind of understand what is this all about, and that was my big thing with watching 3 hours of it last night. 3 hours. I thought,
won't get them back, Kate.
I thought, what are they trying to say? And I wasn't even quite sure. What did they say?
Prince William arrived alone, without Catherine or their children, his expression heavy with the weight of his future role as king. Princess Beatrice and Prince Andrew entered quietly, their presence a nod to the family's complex hierarchy. Harry and Meghan, physically absent but tethered to the moment, joined via a secure video link from Montecito, their faces projected on a large screen beside the fireplace. As Anne began to speak, the room fell silent, the weight of her words settling like a storm cloud. This was no routine reading, it was a reckoning. ## the Queen's hidden will. The Queen's will, handwritten in her unmistakable calligraphy and notarized 6 weeks before her passing on September 8, 2022, was a document of precision and power. Anne's voice, steady and unyielding, carried its words like a verdict: to protect what has been misused, to restore what has been diminished, and to preserve what must endure. Then came the clause that stopped hearts: the Archewell Trust, its intellectual property, holdings, and future disbursements are hereby reverted to Crown oversight and placed under the direct administration of the royal estate. The room froze. A gasp escaped someone, its source lost in the tension. William glanced at Charles, who nodded once, slowly, as if unsurprised, his eyes fixed on the table. On the screen, Meghan's lips parted in disbelief, her voice muted by protocol, but her words clear: "You can't be serious." Harry's hands fidgeted with a ring, a nervous tic from his military days, his face pale and unreadable. And stood resolute, her duty absolute, her gaze unwavering. This was no impulsive act. For years, whispers had circulated within palace walls that the Queen was troubled by Harry and Meghan's post-royal path. Their January 2020 decision to step back as senior royals, dubbed Megxit, had set the stage for a bold reinvention. But their subsequent ventures, the March 2021 Oprah interview with its veiled accusations against unnamed royals, the December 2022 Netflix docuseries Harry and Meghan, weaving private family moments into public spectacle, the Spotify deal with Meghan's podcast Archetypes launched in August 2022, which seemed more about branding than service, and Harry's January 2023 memoir Spare, with its raw accounts of family tensions, had tested the Queen's legendary restraint. She never spoke publicly, never rebuked, but her silence masked a growing resolve. The Archewell Trust, once envisioned as a noble bridge between royal duty and modern philanthropy, had morphed into a commercial juggernaut, blending charity with Hollywood ambition. To the Queen, this was not independence, it was a betrayal of the monarchy's ethos of duty over self-interest. The Archewell Trust, established in 2020, was meant to embody the Sussex's vision of service. Its name, drawn from their son Archie, and the concept of a well of compassion, promised a focus on mental health, gender equality, and digital safety. But as it grew, it became a multifaceted empire: Archewell Foundation for Philanthropy, Archewell Audio for podcasts, and Archewell Productions for media ventures. The $100 million Netflix deal, signed in September 2020, and the Spotify partnership announced in December 2020, turned their charitable mission into a commercial powerhouse. High-profile donors, including liberal billionaires and corporate sponsors, backed the trust, but critics noted its high administrative costs and vague impact. To the Queen, Archewell had strayed from its founding purpose, becoming a vehicle for monetizing royal privilege. ## Why Princess Anne? The choice of Princess and his executor was no accident. Known as the monarchy's steel spine, and had spent decades in service untainted by scandal or self-promotion. She had mediated family disputes, represented the crown in volatile regions, and undertaken the most challenging tasks with quiet resolve. The Queen trusted her to deliver this final directive without hesitation or embellishment. As Anne read the will, her voice carried no emotion, only the weight of her mother's words. When Meghan requested to speak, Anne's response was swift and final: "This is not a discussion." The call ended abruptly, leaving the Sussexes in stunned silence. Anne's role was rooted in her reputation for discretion and duty. Unlike Charles, burdened by the crown's weight, or William, focused on its future, and was the Queen's trusted enforcer. She had no need for the spotlight, no desire for praise. Her delivery of the will was a masterclass in restraint, letting the Queen's words speak for themselves. Sources close to Buckingham Palace later revealed that Anne had been preparing for this moment for months, meeting with legal advisors and estate managers to ensure the Queen's wishes were executed flawlessly. Her selection was a testament to the Queen's foresight. She knew and would act with the precision of a scalpel, cutting through emotion to deliver clarity. ## the legal machinery in motion. The Queen's decision was backed by a formidable legal framework orchestrated by her longtime advisors, Sir Reginald Wareham and Lady Evelyn Maxton. Wareham, a barrister known for his surgical precision, had advised the Crown through divorces, property disputes, and constitutional complexities. Maxton, a retired judge with decades of experience in royal legal matters, ensured the will was airtight. Within hours of the reading, sealed letters bearing the royal crest were delivered to major financial institutions in London, New York, and Los Angeles. These were not requests but orders, directing immediate audits of Archewell's accounts. Payment processors halted disbursements and the trust's main operations fund, a mix of donations, royalty-linked licensing fees, and sponsor payments, was frozen. The legal strategy hinged on a little-known clause in the 2020 agreement signed during the Sussex's exit negotiations. The agreement allowed Archewell to use royal connections, names, contacts, and limited funds for a decade, but only under Crown oversight. By expanding into commercial ventures, the Sussexes had triggered a provision allowing the Crown to reclaim control. The Queen had anticipated resistance and closed every loophole. Sir Reginald Wareham spearheaded what insiders called Operation Restoration, a posthumous restructuring of royal-linked assets. Banks were ordered to audit 3 years of Archewell transactions, and contractors were notified to suspend payments. The trust's operations ground to a halt, with employees facing delayed salaries and partners pulling out. The Sussex's legal team, caught off guard, scrambled for options. A civil suit in California was considered but dismissed. Any challenge would likely fail on jurisdictional grounds and expose sensitive financial details. A letter to King Charles requesting mediation was politely declined. Charles, briefed on his mother's plan months earlier, refused to intervene, saying she did this for the Crown, not against Harry. The legal machinery moved with ruthless efficiency, leaving Harry and Meghan with no recourse. Their attempts to fight back were emotional but lacked legal footing. The Queen's foresight had ensured her will was final. ## the Queen's rationale. Why did the Queen act so decisively? At a private reception days later at St. James's Palace, Princess Anne offered rare clarity. Speaking to senior royal officials and Commonwealth ambassadors, she framed the Queen's decision as stewardship, not vengeance. The Crown cannot survive as an ornament, she quoted from the Queen's private notes. It lives by duty and humility. The Queen had watched Archewell's evolution with growing dismay, seeing it shift from a charitable vision to a commercial empire. The Oprah interview, Netflix series, Spotify podcast, and Spare had, in her view, weaponized royal privilege for personal gain. In private documents, she wrote, "I have loved my grandson, but he has taken the quiet trust that binds us," and revealed a final attempt at reconciliation. In July 2022, the Queen had written to Harry, offering a private meeting at Balmoral. He did not respond. Meghan later denied seeing the invitation. That silence confirmed the Queen's resolve. The Sussexes' path was irreversible. Her will was not just about Archewell, it was a broader statement on legacy. "A crown is not a performance," she wrote. "It is a burden carried with dignity, not for gain but for service." These words, read by Anne, were a direct rebuke to Harry and Meghan's approach, which she saw as prioritizing spectacle over substance. The Queen's private notes, circulated among the Royal Estate's Governing Council, revealed her deep disappointment. She had initially supported Archewell, viewing it as a creative way to maintain royal values while allowing independence. But as it grew into a media-driven brand, she saw a threat to the monarchy's integrity. The Netflix deal, with its $100 million valuation, and the Spotify partnership with its focus on polished production, turned Archewell into a commercial entity. The Queen's decision to revoke its control was not about punishment, it was about containment, ensuring the monarchy's ethos of service endured. ## the fallout in Montecito. In Montecito, the Sussexes reeled. Meghan, once a master of narrative control, was described as crushed, livid, betrayed. She had believed the Queen respected her vision, seeing Archewell as proof she could thrive outside the royal mold. Harry, grappling with emotional betrayal, withdrew, struggling to reconcile his grandmother's love with her final act. Their team entered crisis mode, consulting high-profile lawyers in Beverly Hills and London. A draft statement attacking the Queen's decision was discarded, criticizing a revered monarch would deepen the damage. Plans for a new foundation, untethered from royal ties, were floated but stalled. Rebuilding required time, and time was a luxury they no longer had. The fallout was immediate. The Archewell website went dark, its updates halted. Staff were dismissed, schedules cleared, and a financial advisor was spotted entering their compound. Donors paused contributions, and partners like Netflix and Spotify hesitated, wary of a tarnished brand. The trust's operations froze, with employees facing delayed salaries and contractors pulling out. The Queen's will had not just targeted their finances, it had stripped them of legitimacy. Public reaction was swift and polarized. Supporters decried the monarchy's actions as vindictive, accusing it of punishing the Sussexes for their independence. Critics saw it as a necessary correction, with polls showing rising support for the Queen's decision among UK and Commonwealth citizens. Media outlets dissected Archewell's finances, revealing high administrative costs and vague impact. The Daily Telegraph ran a headline, "Royal Favor Revoked, the Queen's Final Word on Harry and Meghan." The Times called it a reckoning of legacy. Even sympathetic outlets like The Guardian questioned Archewell's transparency. CNN aired a special, "Archewell in Crisis, Where Do the Sussexes Go From Here?" Social media erupted, with hashtags like #Archewell seized and #Queen was right trending. Meghan's silence, once a sign of restraint, now read as avoidance. Her carefully curated image began to crack, with influencers quietly removing Archewell tags and sponsors reevaluating partnerships. #A monarchy reclaimed. The Queen's will was more than a financial maneuver, it was a constitutional statement. Through N's resolve and the law's precision, Elizabeth II ensured her legacy endured. For Harry, the blow was personal, undermining his belief in his grandmother's unconditional love. For Meghan, it was a public dismantling of her identity as a visionary duchess. Archewell, their dream of independence, now stood as a cautionary tale. As they regrouped in Montecito, whispers of a pivot emerged, a new foundation, a return to media, or a focus on women's leadership. But rebuilding would be an uphill battle without the Crown's sanction. The Queen's final act was a masterstroke of foresight. She had watched her family fracture under the pressures of modernity and chose to act in death where diplomacy had failed in life. By choosing in, she ensured her message was delivered with clarity and authority. The monarchy had endured wars, abdications, and scandals, but this was a new kind of exile, one executed not through public shaming but through the quiet power of law and legacy. As the world watches Harry and Meghan's next move, one truth remains: Queen Elizabeth II, even in death, holds the final word.